From his unmatched ability to glide across the court to the charming effect he had on everyone he played against, Roger Federer is one of the greatest tennis players of all time. So let's talk about why pros think he's in a league of his own. Before that, though, I need to take a little deep dive into his technique. I mean, everything from his stance to the way he set himself up for shots was unique. Not only was he constantly on his toes, but he did this mini jump with both feet while heading back towards the baseline. He could prepare for his next shot before he'd even hit the immediate shot, which just made him super unpredictable at times. There was no sliding in his stride either because his balance was just that good. Plus, his vision also remains unrivaled to this day. In fact, this is one of the biggest reasons why he could conserve energy and play well even when he wasn't as mobile as he used to be in his early years. Now, you could say that someone like Novak Djokovic has a more robust win record these days. But nothing can match the sheer extravagance that Federer brought to the court. He had this open grip that let him hit that signature topspin half-volley forehand from the baseline. And if you know anything about tennis, you'd know just how hard that shot can be for, well, pretty much everyone else. Like, there was a time when it was supposed to be a high-risk, low-reward shot, but he turned it into one of the most important weapons in his arsenal. Not to mention, he just held the racket really loosely and only used his wrist for a bit of snap and direction, which of course means that he generated most of the power from his bigger muscles. It's just very efficient tennis. But this wasn't even the best part about his game. That would be his iconic serve. Seriously, while Federer's overall game was mesmerizing to watch, almost like poetry in motion, it was his ability to obliterate his opponents before they've even had a chance to react that puts him above everyone else in the tennis world. He had this innate ability to place his serve anywhere he wanted. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if 20 years down the line, he reveals that he's got telekinetic powers that he'd been using to control the ball. It was just superhuman at times. And it all started with his throw-up. First, he hid the grip of his ball, which made the serve impossible to read. You know, like a pitcher in baseball. After that, it's all about the accuracy. You see, he was able to hit pretty much every serve from the same ball location over and over again without missing the mark. It's honestly incredible. Oh, and stats back it up as well, because the Swiss maestro won almost 90% of the service games in the prime of his career. Now, this also contributed to his longevity. After all, if you can just win point after point without moving much, you're saving a lot of energy. If that's not impressive enough, though, then get this. His second serve also has a career win rate of 57%. That's insane. I mean, I could go on and on about what makes him so special, but of course, the only opinion that matters is from the pros who've faced him. And guess what? They're just as enthralled by his ability. Take Andre Agassi, for example. He's an 8-time Grand Slam winner and faced Federer when he was absolutely dominating the sport in the mid-2000s. According to him, the biggest difference between the Swissman and everyone else was the fact that against most opponents, you could hit the ball and then assess where you could gain an advantage at that point. Not with Roger, though, because there was never any advantage to be had in the first place. Agassi explained how he just neutralized any strength you had and controlled your movement on the court, something that made even the greatest stars look like average tennis players. In fact, the American went as far as to say that Federer was leaps and bounds better than anyone he'd faced, and that it was a privilege to watch him play. Jack Sock didn't hold back while praising the Federer Express either. He talked about how the Swissman just made you extremely uncomfortable on the tennis court. And against him, even the tiniest of mistakes didn't go unpunished. Plus, his footwork meant you were playing a game you didn't want to play and feeding right into how he wanted it. Sock added that he's usually pretty crafty when it comes to return games, but he never had any idea where the serve would land in a match against Federer. And the next thing you know, you've lost 6-2, 6-2, and are feeling like an idiot, he said. Now, of course, Roger isn't the only player in the GOAT debate. So what sets him apart from the likes of Nadal and Djokovic? Well, the pros think it's his aggression on the court. I know it sounds weird to even mention the word aggression next to Federer, just because his game looked so graceful. But according to the former German pro, Philipp Kohlschreiber, it was that effortless aggression that really set you on the back foot. He said that someone like Andy Murray's great at returning, but if you survive through the first phase, you can get a rally going. Or even with Rafa, if you make it past the explosive backhand, you get some time to play the point. But Roger was just built different in that regard because he didn't care if he made 10 mistakes. So one misstep and he'd be all over you, attacking on the front foot and advancing toward the net. I mean, yeah, just how many times has everyone seen him pull off that combination? Even Djokovic, who's made his way into the GOAT debate these days, owes a lot to 20-time Grand Slam champion. Back in 2018, he mentioned how he wouldn't have been the player he was without Roger. And when he broke Roger's ATP record of 310 weeks as world number one, he said that the Swissman was a role model for him and many other tennis players. With that said, amidst all the hype about his play style or how dominant he was in the sport, people often forget one very important thing. He's also an amazing human being in general. Seriously, every single person who's ever interacted with him just raves on and on about how great he is, both on and off the court. John McEnroe labeled him a class act and said he was the most beautiful player he'd ever seen on a tennis court, while Nadal said that a part of his life left him when Federer retired from the sport. After all, these two have had some incredible moments over the years. For Jim Courier, the really great thing about Roger Federer was the feeling he evoked from fans. According to Courier, Federer was an artist out there, with the court being his canvas and the racket being his paintbrush. I mean, you could see what he meant to everyone during his farewell at Laver Cup. He's had multiple standing ovations throughout his career, and yet this one felt the most special, as it included all the legends and the rivals he'd fought against over the years. But even beyond his character or ability on the court, Federer's legacy will continue to shape tennis in the future. Seriously, has there ever been another player who's so loved by everyone, including his greatest enemies? Probably not. Like Djokovic said, he's arguably the most important player to ever play the game. Even Serena Williams talked about how she'd always looked up to him and admired him. Not to mention the millions and millions of people he continues to inspire to this day. In fact, the next big thing in tennis, Carlos Alcaraz, also considers Federer as one of his idols. I mean, he may have hung up his tennis racket, but his influence on the sport, we're going to see it for decades to come. And that, folks, is why Roger Federer is one of the greatest tennis players of all time.